All right, I think we are ready to get started. We've got quite a few folks still coming in, but quite a few have already joined in, and we want to welcome everyone to today's session. If at any point in time you have any issues with the audio or viewing the screens with us today, please feel free to chat into the Zoom webinar platform and get in touch with one of the hosts, and we will try to get that taken care of for you. Also, a couple of housekeeping items before I jump in. I want everyone to know that this session is going to be recorded, and we will make sure that you get a link to that recording after the live session. For anyone also on your team that may have registered but ended up with a scheduling conflict, they will still get the link to the recording, so no problem there. We also will be utilizing the Q&A module of the Zoom webinar platform to respond to any questions that you have. And please feel free to ask any questions that you have throughout the session, as well as a section at the end where we have Q&A. We will take those questions then as well. But definitely encourage any questions that you have and would love to get those in throughout today's session. As a bit of introduction, my name is Amy Green. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here for Cirrus Insight, and I am joined today with Kevin Maccabee and Mike Baldwin. For brief introductions, Kevin is the field CTO at Green Irony with over 18 years of experience in enterprise architecture and building innovative solutions. Green Irony, for those who may not be familiar with their group, they are a Salesforce and MuleSoft partner, helping organizations turn AI into actual intelligence. And then we're also joined by Mike Baldwin, the VP of Product Engineering at Cirrus Insight. Mike is a product management leader with over 15 years experience. He also is spearheading the AI product roadmap at Cirrus Insight as we continue to redefine the customer relationship management experience to accelerate the sales funnel with AI-driven tools. And as you see here on the screen, we have a number of items that we're going to be covering in the agenda today. Understanding the AI advantage in sales, a quick start, a guide to AI tools that you can implement today, preparing data for AI integration and building a scalable AI roadmap, as well as looking at some real-life AI success stories and use cases. So with that, I am going to pass it over to our first presenter, Mike, as he walks us through understanding AI in the sales.
Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for taking some time out of your day to join us today. I know we've got a sort of limited amount of time, about a half an hour, so a lot of stuff to go through. So we'll move through it pretty quickly. I am going to take a leap of faith here and believe that everyone in the webinar this afternoon is here because you do understand what the advantage is, or some of the advantages that AI can bring to your sales process, or you're looking to learn a little bit more about what the possibilities are. But I'm assuming that you have some familiarity with AI and have seen it in action and understand the specific benefit that it's going to be able to bring. I wanted to upfront just try to categorize it a little bit around some of the different types of areas of benefit where you might be able to see within typical sales processes. So a lot of these you can think of in terms of content creation. So if you're familiar with ChatGPT, if you've experimented with that at all, you know the ability to create content in a natural language kind of interaction. So personalized and very specifically tailored content is well known to get you more of a response, a positive response in the sales process. So you could think about emails, think about presentation, content, proposals, anything that would otherwise require a good amount of time and manual steps in writing, authoring, creating, editing, all of that. May not get you all the way 100%, but it can get you, 50%, 80% of the way. And then you can add your own personal touch to it. So huge benefits in content creation, sales enablement, sales automation, again, minimizing necessity of repetitive tasks, manual tasks. Some examples there, just replying to emails or collecting data, data entry, conducting manual research in advance of a meeting. So you need to know who the people and the company are that's being represented in a meeting. Forecasting. So when we think about a lot of the sort of qualitative or language-based data that AI tools will address, but quant data as well, and more importantly, I think real-time data and from multiple sources. So being able to sort of break away from a full dependency on your single data source, whether that's a CRM or maybe a small handful of sources, public web, but be able to pull it all in together, and even more real-time data like email exchanges and meeting transcripts and things like that. So your decision making is being informed by the most current, the most relevant data, most specific to that account or opportunity. And then looking at sales and marketing, just top of the funnel. The you can go ahead and next slide. It's relevant here. If you think of the sales funnel and casting the wide net at the top and the prospecting all the way down through closing the sale, that AI plays a piece at every step in this process. But if you start at the top with better tailored content, better identification of more qualified prospects, that your success rate will cascade down through the funnel, and you can expect to see better metrics, conversion from each step to the next step. We like to think about the funnel as the full process, obviously, from prospecting to close, but also recognize that when you're operating in a tactical mindset, that it's really every next step is the next win, right? Like you need to get to that next step, and every advancement to that next step increases your chance of success throughout the rest of the funnel. The only other points I'd make on this slide is that it's not just about the funnel going in. Once the deal is closed, you can leverage AI for optimizing the implementation and rollout experience for your solution for the clients. And even before that, I would say, just on the note of customer experience, we like to put ourselves in the shoes of the buyers too, the clients of our customers, to think about what their experience through that journey is like. Because even some relatively, seemingly minor wins from the buyer's perspective that help them get from their sort of broad net down to a short list of potential vendors to buy from or to consider, that makes their lives better, and that will give you as a vendor to them a specific leg up or competitive advantage in that process. So we're not just optimizing for the salespeople and the sales team, but we're optimizing for the buyers that they're trying to sell to as well. So just thinking about it that way, AI has a lot to offer at each one of these steps. If we can go to the next slide. So just wanted to give a couple examples, and really there's several examples. So if you think about each one of those steps through the funnel, you can think about a specific functional category that would map to, or multiple categories that might map to each one of those steps or multiple of the steps. So this is just an example, and frankly, it's a deceivingly small example. I'd say this view, think about exponentially more players in each one of these categories than is shown here today. And a lot of these players don't operate in just one of these categories. They operate in multiple. But some of the categories, of course, CRM or add-ons to CRM assistance, sales engagement, sales automation. We talked about content creation, which leads into communication and collaboration, coaching, email coaching, or a call coaching, which is really interesting, recording and transcription. So everything from the sort of the tactical to the data aggregation, organization, presentation, feedback cycles. All of this is made possible by various AI tools that are out there, and there are lots of choices for all of them. Selecting the right solution. So this is a bit of a challenge. So I like to think I'm a product manager at heart. So for me, it's really all about starting with what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? It's not AI for AI's sake. AI is a tool, not a solution unto itself, right? You got to be very specific about what it is that you're trying to solve, and you can't solve for everything at once. But if you have a good view of what the highest priority problem or problems that you're trying to solve for in your sales process are, then that will help you whittle down very quickly to which tools are going to be the most relevant. Obviously, you're going to want to look at tool effectiveness, data accuracy, the data quality, so all of the efficiency and ease of use in the world isn't going to be useful if the data is not correct. And so being able to sort of objectively measure on that. But that said, the best tool in the world isn't going to be adopted by your sales team if the ease of use and the user experience and that ability to adapt to and match your internal workflows aren't there. So there's a lot to consider. Also need to consider if you're looking for more of a niche solution, a point solution versus a broader suite of functionality or a platform kind of play. So there's a lot there to dissect through. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you how some of this maps out. Now, this is a view from G2, their AI sales assistant. So sales assistant's kind of a broad term and could apply to a lot of these tools in some different ways. But if you look about on the chart, sort of left to right is satisfaction, niche to high performers, and market presence um, from contenders to leaders. In the upper right, in that leaders quadrant, you see a lot of familiar logos. Obviously, Salesforce is up there in the high right, upper right corner. You see Zoom Info, HubSpot, Gong, some other familiar logos up there, and they do cover. I've listed out sort of what some of the primary functional areas are. Zoom Info is a database, Gong is sales engagement. Probably know it originally from call recording and transcription. But how these bigger players are leveraging AI is really interesting, and it's not single faceted. It's typically in a number of different areas across the platform. So definitely worth looking into to all of those just to sort of see what the wealth of the possible is. The what's being done today already. But then at the same time, you see there's a center of mass here, sort of below the line of market presence, that a lot of these are niche players, a lot of these are single function, but they're innovating rapidly and they're growing rapidly. So lower barriers to entry, and by that I mean cost, I mean ease of use, I mean simplicity. So again, if you're looking for a specific point solution, some ideas in this category. So certainly Cirrus Insight, we have our AI solution, our flagship is called Meeting AI, and that's focused on pre-meeting research, pre-meeting preparation right now. And then others around transcribing, prospecting, coaching, generative content. Of course, you can't forget ChatGPT, but some of these others are fairly small for the moment and niche players and have lower sort of entry points for being able to get in. And if they're not free, many of them, almost all of them have freemium or trial kinds of experiences that you can get in without commitment and see what the impact will have on your organization. So next slide. Yeah, and so now I'll turn it over to Kevin. We'll talk about building out a scalable roadmap.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So as we're talking about, and as Mike was going through the different tools, the different potential capabilities or roles that this could help with, how it could help your business in a sales capacity. When you go back and you start talking to your boss or the executive team and you start saying, hey, maybe we could bring in AI. Most of the time, the executive team is going to say, okay, that's good, but what's the cost analysis? How's it going to help the business? How does this fit in with all of our long-term goals, so on and so forth? So when you start trying to think about how can I bring AI into my organization, you need to think about it in terms of a roadmap. And in order to start a roadmap, you need to understand both the business, but you also need to understand what are the use cases. Generative AI has tremendous analysis and content creation features, capabilities, so on and so forth. But what you really want to do is you want to start trying to prioritize the different use cases in areas where it could help, such as the ones that Mike was listing. Or let's say you're doing sales and you're B2B and you're working heavily with RFPs, contracts, so on and so forth. AI can do a lot of that analysis that is going to take your salespeople or your technical salespeople or others a significant amount of time to run through and understand and be able to respond. So you want to try and pull out what are these different use cases where AI could help us. Analysis, review, content creation, taking and coming up with new ways or paths that our sales team could take. But you want to then take all those use cases, identify them or prioritize them by ROI. Is it going to give you a significant amount of human resource savings so that you could scale out either a sales or service and support team and allow them to be able to take and monitor the AI bots versus having to hire individuals? Or it could be that you're still going to be hiring everybody, but you would like their time to be more focused on going after and tackling the most important accounts. So that could be saving them time and ability, or by either having AI create the emails as was being discussed, or having it do these other things that ends up soaking up, say, 20-30% of a salesperson's day. So after you have that prioritization and you start saying, okay, here are the top 3 use cases where AI could benefit us, and here's a general idea of how much that could end up saving us or making us that much money. And oh, by the way, these use cases tie back to the overall corporate roadmap. You want to then take all those use cases and identify what are the back-end systems and data that is needed to give to AI so that it can formulate an actionable response. And so this will often be your CRM, of course, when we're talking sales here. But a lot of times you're going to have some customer contract information, you're going to have some product details or maybe support stuff that's going to be in other systems. So you want to say, okay, here are the systems and the data to support AI. Now, I'm going to take and do a review of what are the different AI models out there and the AI tools, such as the one that Mike was talking about and showing earlier. Which of those can best solve these prioritized use cases and also be reused in future projects? Because what you don't want to do is buy a bunch of off-the-shelf stuff that you're only going to use for one tiny piece that isn't going to have a significant impact. And now you're having to manage a large software portfolio and your IT team is now crying. So then what do you want to do? You identified the models. Now you're going to want to start looking at creating that AI roadmap. And what you want to do when you have that roadmap is you want to take those high ROI use cases, the systems and data, the models and tools that you've identified, and you want to say, okay, which of these can serve as the foundation? If I unlock my system that has a bunch of contracts and data in there, then that can allow me to fulfill 2 use cases. Well, that's a smart one to start with, right? So you want that foundation for either your predictive or generative AI to be the starting point that you can then jump off of. You want to make sure that you can reuse your tools going into the future. And then, of course, at the end of that roadmap should tie back to the business roadmap. Whatever the long-term company goals are, tie it back to that because that makes it an easier sell for you with your executive internal team and your operations teams and so on and so forth to say, yeah, this is worth our time to invest in and go after. So that's how we get to our roadmap. Now, you'll notice I talked about data. So let's start getting into how can we get the data and get it to AI to make it actionable. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we want to talk a little bit around preparing data for AI integration. The AI recommendations that it comes up with, generative, predictive, or what have you, are only going to be as good as the data, training, and reference material that you give it. So you'll find that a lot of times executives and other decision makers within an organization, when they start talking AI, they're like, oh man, we've got 20 years of data. Let's just dump 20 years of data in and let it run loose. Well, I can pretty much guarantee you there's a lot of noise in the signals and in the information there. And similar to an intern or assistant that is working for you, you're not going to give them 20 years of data. You're going to start by saying, here are the most important pieces of data. Here is how we operate. Here is what we do, right? And so you want to make sure that you have not only identified the backend systems in the data, but you've been able to analyze that data. You've been able to pick out the most important records, the most important examples that are going to represent and help with this use case. Again, coming up potentially with some training material or even just reference material that talk about the best practices that your organization uses to close deals. So now that we know where this data is at, now that we know what kind of data, and now that we know we've got it cleaned or it will be cleaned, you want to figure out, how am I going to get it out of that backend system? This is where you start moving into aligning on an integration platform, such as an iPaaS, such as MuleSoft with Salesforce, or other ones that are out there. And as a partner who works extensively with both MuleSoft and Salesforce, and AI deals both on Salesforce platforms and off, it almost always comes down to, yeah, we got a lot of stuff in our CRM, but we need some of the data elsewhere. How are we going to get that? How can we build on it? Generally, we recommend MuleSoft, obviously, to be able to make that happen. But in any case, you want to come up with, how am I going to unlock these systems and get that data to AI and to the tool sets that we've decided on? And then you're going to want to take and create an integration plan that is going to stand up that platform or unlock the data. So when we start thinking about data, it's not just going to be individual records in a backend ERP, order management, or distribution software. You need to think about other things too, such as tasks, calendars, email for your salespeople, getting all of this integrated in and getting that data synced over. And that's where you start thinking about tools such as Cirrus Insights, where they are more than capable of being able to sync all of these different activities and all of this different type of data that's the most important to salespeople from these other systems, and getting that into your CRM and getting that where it needs to go. So again, we start by talking with the roadmap. It needs to tie back to the high end or the upper business roadmap overall. Identify the use cases that'll have the highest ROI, prioritize those, identify the systems and data, make sure that data is clean, make sure you have a path forward to be able to get that data out and get it to AI within a reasonable time and frequency, not like once every week or two, hopefully as real time as you can get it. And now you have a plan to get the data out and get it to AI and into your CRM. Now you have a roadmap that ties back to business goals, use cases, and everything else. And those two things combined will allow you to set forth on a journey that's going to have a successful impact on your business utilizing generative AI or predictive AI. Next. All right, I'll hand it back over to you, Mike.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. So just wanted to take this, I guess, the next step and like, well, how do we get rolling? We've got the best laid plans. We've got the technology understood, the tools selected, the data cleansed and ready to go. And then the final variable is often the sales team itself, right? The person element. So just wanted to touch on a couple points around this. First off, I mentioned on the earlier slide that being clear around what problem you're trying to solve with AI is critical upfront. And I'd say take that from company level down to team level, sales team, and even individual level if you can. So the more meaningful the problem is that that you're trying to use AI to help solve, the more likely that you're going to get individual users adopting it. I know every company culture is different, and certain industries or certain professions are going to have team members maybe operate with varying levels of autonomy. But the bottom line, if they are able to clearly see what's in it for me, the more likely they are to even try it, let alone adopt it, widespread. So trying to understand that at the individual level, I would encourage upfront. I would also plan on a phased rollout, and that is probably common sense, I think, for a lot of us. But start a pilot program and involve your stakeholders as early in the process, as early in the planning for that as you can, so that your ultimate, also the beneficiaries, right, the recipients, the end users of the AI value that it's generating are in it from the get-go, and they are aligned with direction. They're able to comment and provide feedback on decisions that are made throughout the process. And so by the time you get to the actual rollout, they're not so much just a beneficiary, but they're a true partner in the project. So multiple, functions, and maybe it's not just sales team, but other stakeholders that are going to be involved either directly or indirectly throughout the process. I do recommend just-in-time training for the sales team, so that's not so far in advance that that loses context by the time the rollout takes place. But again, right information, right points in time for applicability. And then, other considerations. Again, the AI is going to assist in the long run, but any kind of transition, any kind of change brings the risk of disruption. So what I would really encourage prioritizing minimization of the disruption as much as possible. So where workflows exist, try to align those existing workflows rather than redefining new ones. Paying attention to not just org level or company level considerations around data and privacy, but also individual personal perspectives on comfort levels. Understanding that end user, that true consumer of the AI solution, what their constraints are, because those can always affect adoption. And then also, really, the team culture as a whole. It starts with the leadership at the top, trying to drive a mentality where what we do today, it might work fine, but it's not good enough, right? Because the landscape is changing, AI is changing everything, and so just being good enough, or this is the way we've always done it, is not only going to not help you get ahead and maintain any kind of competitive advantage, but it's really going to become table stakes. So if you're not continuously innovating and looking for new ways, new processes to solve existing problems and new problems, that you're going to get left behind. So just starting that culture from top down with the leadership. Next slide. So this is a very sort of simple but tactical way to transition from what Kevin was talking about with the business case and establishing the ROI into some tactical project rollout strategies. So this is just, again, it's simple framework. You can modify this however you like, but at a very minimum, I like to think about the benefit value, which is really the ROI, ultimately the business case, but then overlay that with the costs and time, both direct and indirect costs, opportunity costs. Acknowledge risks and unknowns upfront. This is a big one, right? Because in any new project, any new technology, there's a lot of optimism, but you have to admit that you don't know what you don't know around things where there might be technology constraints, or you're not really sure how things are going to play out. There's certainly going to be adoption unknowns and potentially financial unknowns in terms of the metrics that you're looking to achieve. And then strategic alignment. I think, Kevin, you mentioned this too. Does looking back at the company level goals, right? Do the projects that I'm considering here serve just the sales team or salespeople, or do they actually help support strategic initiatives that are coming from the top down? So just doing sort of a t-shirt sizing on these, high, medium, low, and very quickly you can identify, hey, maybe these are the things that we do up front. You can't solve for all the things all at once, and you can't solve for all the things for any one thing overnight. So picking a project, a solution, or two at a time to implement is a smart way to do it. Be really objective, be honest, make sure you're clear on your metrics, that you know what good looks like, you know what success looks like, so you don't over or under invest in a particular solution. And keep that mentality of, AI is wonderful, AI is potentially even magical, but it is not a solution unto itself. It is a means to an end. So you got to know where you're going, and how will you know when you get there. Next slide.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some case studies, practical use cases. What are some of the numbers that are shaking out over the last year regarding AI and how it can help? So I've got one statistic here directly from Salesforce, and then three others that come out of the work that we've been doing, either with our clients and prospects or with ourselves internally. So 83% of sales teams with AI saw revenue growth this year versus 66% without AI. And what this is showing is that not only do you have a larger and increasing number of people that are utilizing AI in a sales capacity, but that having a direct comparison between those teams and groups that are using it versus those that don't is already showing that AI is going to be able to take and help you level up your sales process and your capabilities. But what does this mean, and what does it actually look down to if we're trying to utilize AI for specific pieces? So we've worked with a few different law firms And we've worked with some companies in construction and others that they end up having to do a lot of document analysis. Or maybe they're a manufacturing firm and their salespeople are getting just hammered and hammered with requests for proposals, everything else, and they don't have the time to fulfill it. So what we started seeing is by utilizing AI to do things in the case of lawyers, such as reviewing medical documentation and putting together an initial medical chronology, or taking information and documentation after interviewing a prospective client and then having and comparing that against the corpus of data they've got to figure out, is this trial going to be something we could win if it goes to trial? And then in terms of contracts, in terms of, say, you need to review documentation and score things with codes and everything else, we started seeing that AI was able to save us around 75% in terms of time, and save those individuals. And sometimes it's drastically more. The larger the document set or the contracts, or the more complicated the process is that you're having to take and have your salespeople start putting together and responding to and researching, the more documentation that's involved, the more time that's going to be saved, because you can get responses back within seconds or a minute versus needing to read 5 hours and then coming up with and having to go back and cross-check everything. Next is that when you start getting into more complicated sales cycles, you're going to start seeing more and more gaps. You're going to identify those. Every time you talk to a client, you get off and you start reviewing what's my next step as part of my sales or close plan. You're going to try to be identifying things that you've missed, things that could cause the deal to fall. What are considerations that cause things to go wrong at this point in time in the deal cycle? Well, what we've been seeing is that by setting up a standard best practice plan of things we should look at, by gathering information from our salespeople to get a hold of what are the most important rebuttals or objections that prospects are coming up with, what are the things that we see, how can we respond? By gathering those important key pieces information together and feeding that to AI, through each step of the deal cycle, especially if you're getting all of your data into the CRM, you can start having AI review it, compare it against the best practices and the things to work out, and then you start having it identify those gaps. And what we started seeing is that 20%, we started finding that AI was able to identify gaps that we hadn't noticed that could help us save or close a deal. And then finally, taking a look at applicants and screening resumes, first interviews, so on and so forth. It can cost a lot of time for HR and even your team, especially if you've got a smaller sales team. It can cost a lot of time to sit there and have to review a ton of resumes that are coming in whenever you have an opening for an account executive or a software engineer or tech salesperson. And then you're generally going to have HR do an initial interview or somebody do that initial interview, and then they move on through the rest of the process. Well, what we found is that by utilizing AI to do that pre-screening of the resume, by feeding it all this information about our core values, what we care about, what we're looking for, we were able to take and pre-screen and have a 60% improvement in the quality of the people that were moving from pre-screening into second round interviews, because we weren't having to spend the time. It was pointing out and saying, here are the ones that you should not screen or not talk to, and here's why. Here's where they don't match. Now, is it perfect? No. But we've been having around an 85 to 90% success rate whenever we would do retros against people that were screened out compared to what we had before. And that's where we came up with that 60% number. So I want to say all of this to say that there are different ways that AI can benefit you. And that's why it's so important, as Mike was saying, that you come up with the strategy, that you come up with the way to tie this back to the business roadmap, to tie back to what matters, and to find out what is taking the most time and giving your salespeople the most consternation, and then using AI to be able to solve those problems. All right, I'll turn it back over.
Great. I love that last example, Kevin, of the applicants coming through what's essentially analogous to a sales funnel too, right? If you take that same 60% improvement, maybe apply that to your prospects at the top of the sales funnel, that improvement, that tailoring is going to cascade again down through the funnel and give you a better chance of success at each step of that funnel all the way to close.
Absolutely.
One last example, this is more recent that we've encountered with Cirrus Insight. I mentioned before, we have an AI solution called Meeting AI, which is focused initially right now on pre-meeting research, pre-meeting prep. And the amount of time that is spent on by sales teams in manually preparing for meetings, especially those initial meetings, the discovery meetings at the top of the funnel, where the stakes are the highest and the least amount of information is known, that it can, in this particular account that we've been talking to, that they were spending 6 to 12 hours per week researching prospects with a fairly small team. And with Meeting AI, it's been able to be reduced to 1 to 3 hours per week. So essentially a 75% reduction in the amount of time spent. And then that time then is now available for more selling, right? Booking more meetings and getting more prospects into the funnel. So just a recent but fairly salient example. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kevin. And thanks for those of you that are still here with us. We do have a couple of questions, but before we jump into a few of those questions, I do want to highlight that the Meeting AI tool that Mike just talked about, we do have a free 14-day trial offering for that. And I will include the link to that here in the chat in just a moment so that everyone can certainly check that out if you would like to do so. It really is probably one of the easiest AI tools I've ever used. So I definitely encourage everyone to check that out. And then also the Green Iron and team is working with a lot of Salesforce customers today, as Kevin mentioned, through some of the use cases that he walked us through today, to determine what their AI roadmap needs to look like, integrating with the tool sets that they have today. And so they are offering a free 1-hour consulting session to help you map out your AI strategy. So I have put in the links to those to everyone here in the chat so that you all can take advantage of both of these tools. So hopefully you all will do so. So we'll jump over to some of the questions that we had, and I think I'll put this first question over to Mike. And the question is, how can leaders effectively kind of foster that early adoption and create enthusiasm for some of the AI initiatives that they have today? You talked a little bit about the just-in-time training, which I really, really liked that tidbit. I think for salespeople in particular, it's all about the deals that they're working in their pipeline in that moment. And so whatever's top of mind for them then is what they're going to pay attention to. So I thought that was a great tidbit, but any other pieces of advice you might have?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say, and this is an overgeneralization, perhaps, but salespeople, in whatever shape or form that happens to represent, but salespeople will tend to choose the path that is most beneficial for them personally to move the deal forward, right? And so, if they see an opportunity to clear a roadmap or to advance to the next phase with a prospect, that they are generally going to be inclined to do that based on their own motivation. So it's really about connecting with the salespeople themselves to be able to demonstrate how what the AI solution brings to the table is materially better, not just a little better, but materially better than what they're doing today, even if what they're doing today is, number one, what they're comfortable with, but number two is their history, right? Like maybe they pride themselves on their technique and their framework, or however they want to think about it. But I know it's both it's often a very tactical, transitional or transactional kind of process or mentality for them, but it's also very personal. And there's a little, a bit of like, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, and these are the relationships that I'm forming because of it, and it's important to me, right? So you have to kind of think about it from both sides. Put yourself in their shoes, which may sound a little bit maybe too far reaching, but if you think about your sales teams as if you were a member of the sales team, it becomes a lot easier to understand what the motivations and the constraints are going to be. Once you're able to demonstrate that material improvement of value over what they're doing today, it tends to spread because any one salesperson seeing somebody else getting an advantage over what they're doing tends to be copied and replicated, and it will spread and go viral from there. That I think that sort of bottom up adoption, sort of land and expand kind of approach is much more effective than a top down mandate kind of approach where here's the tool, now use it. Doesn't really work.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that falls in line with a lot of the research that we've seen out there around if AI is in use, there's on average a 40% increase in
Mhm.
sales productivity, and also being able to shorten the sales cycle by an average of 30% when they're utilizing AI tools in the process. So that's
Absolutely.
great.
And like I said before, I mean the statistics are impressive, right?
Mhm.
It's like you can't ignore it. It's not a little gain; it's a big gain. But at the same time, getting over that sort of that initial hump of adoption, there's going to be a litany of constraints that perhaps the teams will impose upon themselves, individual level, team level, whether it's privacy, sensitivity around just personal preference, or aligning with a workflow that they know, like having the conversations with them, that the end users up front early in the process is going to be important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think this question is probably most appropriate for Kevin. So Kevin, the question here is, we have a lot of different departments within the organization that utilize Salesforce today, and they're all asking for AI tools. So, do you have any advice for how we, and I'll phrase this how they put the question in, any advice for how we figure out who's up to bat first?
Oh, wow. Well, I would say a lot of that is going to depend on which teams are going to want to most adopt AI, which ones are going to have the highest ROI for the work that they're doing, so on and so forth. But what I will say is that you're already kind of winning by being on the Salesforce platform itself, because Salesforce, with the introduction of Einstein Copilot earlier in the year and now Agentforce and everything else, which we're already rolling out with clients, is that it saves a lot of time in the road mapping process. If you already have a platform that the company standardized on, and as you were saying, Amy, especially if it's going to be different SKUs or Salesforce products across an organization, they're all interested in it, that becomes easier when you're building out that roadmap, because now it's not a question of how many different AI tools am I going to choose. And obviously, you're going to want to use those who work great with Salesforce, such as Cirrus Insight, but you're going to be able to take and just work with your Salesforce account executive, and you can pick up things like Agentforce and Data Cloud. And now you're going to be able to unlock capabilities across a large number of SKUs. You're going to be able to take and utilize AI throughout the sales process because of the way that they've incorporated it as part of Sales Cloud. You're going to be able to use Agentforce and these generative AI assistants as part of Service Cloud. So whenever you start, after you've taken and sold the deal, and something's coming up and they need product support, or they're asking back with more questions, or in a B2C environment, take an airline industry, right? If they have everything and a lot of their data on Salesforce regarding customer data, and then they're working with, say, Navitaire, Sabre, or others for billing or charges, so on and so forth, then you can flip this stuff on inside of Salesforce and have it start making recommendation to your customers immediately. So I would say that first, find out what's a commonality from all these different departments. What are they needing to do? Is there any commonality between what they're trying to do, such that you could say, I'm going to get this product or turn on this Salesforce feature. Now I'm able to service for the departments, and they're going to be able to find ways to be able to make that, to show the ROI and to be able to start recouping that investment that you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think great, like, hey, great opportunity too to maybe book some time with the Green Irony team too to assess, what the different platforms are that you're utilizing within the organization today. And, putting myself in the shoes of a single Salesforce admin or even a small team of Salesforce admins of an organization, I'm sure they already have a lot on their plate that they're working on. And so getting asked to add AI to that can feel overwhelming, I'm sure, no doubt. But yeah, thank you for that. So I know we've gone a bit past our allotted amount of time with the group, so I want to be respectful of that. I want to appreciate everybody who joined us today and spent time with us, and of course want to thank Kevin and Mike for a great presentation and information. Again, we'll make sure that everybody gets a link to the recording of this. I don't know if Kevin and Mike have any closing remarks they want to say to the group. If not, we'll definitely make sure that everyone gets followed up with. And if there are any questions that did not get answered, we'll try to make sure to get to those after today's session.
Great. Thank
I
you.
would say, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say thank you very much, Amy, and thanks everybody for being here. I have a couple of thoughts, but please go ahead, Kevin.
Sure. And I want to echo what you said there, Mike. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everybody, for coming and attending and listening to us. My closing remarks would be what you see now with what AI is capable of doing is going to have exponentially more applicability within a year or two and even further out. We are just at the start of the curve on how we're going to be able to utilize generative AI and even predictive AI to help us throughout our daily lives, not just at work, but at home and everything else. So keep your finger on the pulse. Pay attention to news, pay attention to what's coming out, because I can guarantee there's going to be something you absolutely will want AI to be able to do to help save you money and make you money at your business.
Absolutely. I'd say the solutions, the offers that are in the market today are going to mature and evolve exponentially, as you said, just extremely rapidly over the next couple of years. We are at the tip of the iceberg, and also the expectations from the consumers, from the customers, and the customers' customers on how AI is raising the bar for product experience and customer experience are going to go hand in hand with that. So the game field is changing, and if you're not experimenting, at least right now, even for small problems to try to solve or small areas of improved efficiency, then you're going to be left behind. This is not an if or, it's a when and how fast.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Kevin and Mike, for those closing remarks. And again, just want to say thanks again for everybody attending today. And we hope to see you on a future session. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.